Palatine Park, in the heart of Fairmont, West Virginia, is a vibrant and picturesque destination that stands as a testament to the area's commitment to community and recreation. This area's rich history dates back to over a century ago and has traversed from prosperity to urban decay before being reborn into the celebrated space residents and visitors find it today. The park has emerged as a vibrant and accessible space offering an array of amenities and activities for all ages. It boasts scenic walking paths, beautifully landscaped areas, and serene green spaces where families can gather for picnics and relaxation. The park is the home of the annual West Virginia Three Rivers Festival, a summer concert, entertainment, and events series, all fostering a sense of community among Fairmont's diverse population. In June of 2020, a public art project was commissioned that gave us the magnificent mural which overlooks the river in downtown Fairmont. Along with the Children's Splash Park, one of the park's focal points is its state-of-the-art natural amphitheater. This venue has become a stage for local and national performers. The Palatine area has witnessed the changing landscape of Fairmont with the passing of time. Originally, this area was known as Water Street. But it was during the Prohibition era of the 1920s that this area faced its darkest days, a surge of crime that would cast a shadow over its illustrious history. To uncover this tale of urban and moral decay, we must journey back in time. Water Street, once the epicenter of Fairmont's industry and prosperity, thrived during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Nestled alongside the Monongahela River, it bustled with commerce, housing warehouses, factories, and businesses inseparably linked to the coal and railroad sectors. Its riverfront location was pivotal in the city's expansion, serving as a crucial artery for transportation. Yet Water Street was more than an industrial hub. It was the lifeblood of the local community, delivering essential services and fostering social connections. However, as the coal industry followed by the railroad needs started to weaken in the mid-20th century, along with Prohibition, Water Street encountered challenges which marked the beginning of a downward spiral to an era of lawlessness and decay that would place a pronounced strain on the city. Early 1920s, a dark shadow of a sinister underbelly lurked, one which would forever etch the name of Lily Belle Lemon into the archives of its dark history. Bella Lemon, as she was known, was a strong woman with a magnetic allure. She had once been the jewel of Fairmont's Water Street, an area known more for its indecent shadows than its respectable sunshine. She had the kind of allure that men lusted over and drew them like moths to a flame. It was this very allure that would lead her down a treacherous path, one which she could never escape. Water Street, the heart of Fairmont's sordid underbelly, was a place where morality was silenced and vice thrived, where nightlights concealed a darkness that shined bright within its shadows. Bella Lemon was both a victim and a queen of this underworld. Here her story begins as an enterprising young woman with her own place on Water Street. She was the most popular of all the evening working women in town. Looking for excitement, she became entangled with Big Rosie, a powerful figure in the criminal underbelly of Fairmont, who lavished her with gifts and attention. But Big Rosie's attention came with a steep price. Bella soon found herself trapped in a web of violence and deceit. The Mafia, with its iron grip on Fairmont, played a significant role in Bella's life. The decision to take her away from her predator Big Rosie was hatched by the most powerful leaders within the criminal organization. They sought to weaken Big Rosie and assert their dominance over Water Street. Philip, a member of the Mafia, was chosen to carry out this task. Philip was no stranger to the criminal world, and he had a plan. He became Bella's lover, charming her with intensity. Bella, yearning for protection and affection, found solace in his arms. Little did she know that Philip's true intention was to gain her trust, for he had been practicing his knife skills, preparing for the most sinister of tasks. The Mafia's plan unfolded with calculated precision. Bella was persuaded to run away with Philip, away from the clutches of Big Rosie. She agreed, driven by fear and a desperate desire to escape the violence that had engulfed her life. They fled to Barrackville, West Virginia, where a call to Big Rosie lured him to retrieve his car they had taken. However, upon Big Rosie's arrival, he was confronted by a quiet stranger who calmly demanded a bill of sale for his beloved car. This stranger harbored deep-rooted connections to the Mafia, leaving Big Rosie with no choice but to concede defeat. It was during this moment of vulnerability that Philip and one of his partners in crime seized Bella and Big Rosie's car. The car would vanish, leaving only a fleeting glimpse of it in Fairmont, a piece of the puzzle that would haunt investigators for years. As the days passed, Bella Lemon's life took an unexpected turn. She found herself growing fond of Philip, appreciating his kindness and comparing him favorably to her previous tormentor. But love wasn't part of the Mafia's plan. It was about control and power. Dread of the plan then overcame Philip when, charmed by Bella, he became smitten with love. Bella soon tired of Philip. Jilted by Bella's revelation that she didn't love him, Philip turned to the Mafia leaders for guidance. They decided that Bella must die. It was a chilling verdict, one that would mark her for an unescapable fate. In a bizarre twist, the Mafia chose the boss's brother Tony to carry out the murder. Tony had been eager to prove his loyalty to the gang, and this gruesome task was his initiation rite. Under the pretense of love, he courted Bella Lemon, gaining her trust while secretly practicing with his knife. Bella Lemon's final ill-fated journey took her from the familiar streets of Fairmont, West Virginia, to Baltimore, where she met a tragic end. Lured away by promises and a newfound love interest, Bella boarded a train, unknowingly headed towards her demise. In Baltimore's grim underbelly, she met a gruesome fate, falling victim to a sinister plot. Her lifeless body was later discovered, and her identity was confirmed by a Fairmont newspaper clipping found nearby inside her hat, making a somber conclusion to her story. The murder of Bella Lemon, a woman entrapped by circumstances and manipulated by those she trusted, was a tragedy that shook Fairmont to its core. It was a stark reminder of the darkness that had resided beneath the town's peaceful facade. Bella was quietly buried in Mannington Cemetery, Her brother and a neighbor were the only attendees at her gravesite service. As the investigation into Bella's murder unfolded, it revealed a web of criminal activities that extended far beyond Fairmont, implicating a network of gangsters, extortionists, and murderers. The town of Fairmont would forever bear the scars of this grim chapter in its history, a chapter that saw the rise and fall of Bella Lemon, a woman whose life was extinguished by the very forces that ensnared her. But those forces were blind as to their final chapter, as the investigation into Bella's murder would ultimately bring their criminal empire crashing down, leaving it as burnt ashes in the history of Fairmont. In the wake of Bella Lemon's tragic murder, the once untouchable mafia empire that had cast a shadow over Fairmont, West Virginia, began to crumble. The events that unfolded in the aftermath of her death would mark the beginning of the end for the notorious criminal organization. Bella's murder was met with shockwaves in Fairmont. While the town had long been aware of the criminal activities that festered in the shadows of Water Street, the brutality of her death served as a wake-up call. The citizens were no longer willing to turn a blind eye to the reign of terror imposed by the mafia. Law enforcement agencies, both local and federal, were galvanized into action. The police had gathered critical evidence from the confessions of gang members and associates, unveiling a gruesome tapestry of crime that stretched back for years. As the news spread, public outrage swelled, and the pressure on authorities to bring the culprits to justice became insurmountable. One by one, the members of the Black Hand found themselves in the crosshairs of law enforcement. Fairmont detectives, along with their counterparts from Baltimore, worked tirelessly to apprehend those responsible for Bella's murder and the long list of other crimes tied to the mafia's reign of terror. Key figures in the criminal organization, once untouchable, began to fall. Philip, the man who played a central role in Bella's abduction, was taken into custody. Tony, the younger brother who had committed the gruesome act, found himself behind bars as well. These arrests marked a pivotal turning point in the investigation. As more arrests followed, the mafia's iron grip on the town began to loosen. The criminal syndicate's leadership, once so formidable, became fragmented and weakened. The citizens of Fairmont, no longer living in fear of the mafia's retribution, started to cooperate with law enforcement, providing valuable information that further unraveled their criminal empire. With each new piece of evidence and each arrest, the mafia's secrets were laid bare for all to see. The extent of their criminal activities, from extortion and murder to arson and robbery, shocked even the most hardened of observers. The Fairmont Mafia had ruled by fear and intimidation, but now they were the ones trembling in the face of justice. In December, the elusive Big Rosie met his own violent end in Chicago. He had sought refuge in the Windy City, but the long arm of Mafia justice had finally caught up with him. His death signified the end of an era, a chapter closed in the darkest corners of Fairmont's history. With the Mafia's leadership in disarray and its members facing lengthy prison sentences, the criminal organization could no longer maintain a stranglehold on Fairmont. Businesses, once under their control, found new owners, and Water Street began to shed its infamous reputation. As the years passed, Fairmont started to heal. The memory of Bella Lemon's tragic death lingered, but the town had reclaimed its peaceful serenity. The once feared mafia had been vanquished, and the scars that they had inflicted on the community began to fade. Bella Lemon's murder had been a catalyst for change. It had united the citizens of Fairmont and ignited a determination to rid their town of the criminal element that had plagued it for far too long. After the downfall of a criminal empire that had long held Fairmont, West Virginia in its vice-like grip during the 1920s, the investigation into the brutal murder of Bella Lemon marked a turning point, ending an era of lawlessness and vice. Now we look to Fairmont historian Dr. Raymond Alvarez to lead us through the transformation of this area into the vibrant space it has become today, Palatine Park.
My name is Dr. Raymond Alvarez, and I am very excited about this anthology series about Water Street and Palatine because, again, it's a piece of forgotten history which John has brought back to our daily lives here so we can remember it. The interesting thing with his story, it also intersects with the life and times of C.E. Ned Smith. He was the longtime editor of the Fairmont Times. His family owned the Fairmont Index, the Times, the Fairmont Times. They were in the newspaper business for, I don't know, probably 100 years or more. And he was editor around 1920, from the 20s to the 1950s. And he wrote a daily column. So when it comes to Water Street, he started writing about this. The first one I found was in July 1926. And he had been up inspecting the new Fairmont City Reservoir, which is today, part of Morris Park. And he was talking about the beautiful panorama up there. But as he drove home and crossing the river, he wrote this: "And when we came home, we passed through Water Street as it lay hideous in the glare of the afternoon sun. How quickly could a deft hand obliterate this, thought we, and plant this wilderness of humanity with flowers and shrubs and shade trees." In September 1934, he brings the subject up again by commenting on Dr. George Bevans of the First Presbyterian Church, who delivered a sermon on the behalf of slum eradication on Water Street. And he wrote, "We have known for some time that Water Street Park idea is taking hold. But when a man like Dr. Bevans begins to preach from his pulpit, the signs are growing most propitious. As things stand today, the mere presence of Water Street is a disgrace to the city." And then he goes on, he said, it's not the people's fault, but it's basically how this area was basically allowed to degenerate. Part of that was the construction of the $1 Million Bridge, because that, in essence, cut off Water Street, hid Water Street from view, and it became, like a small little area that was dark, secretive. Trash was just thrown from the tenements along the riverbanks. And Mr. Smith's office was actually in the old normal school at the top of Adams Street. That's where Booth Towers is. His column is very easy when he talks about it. But then he says, if the entire East Side riverbank could be turned into a city park, and at the same time the present slums, which we repeat are a disgrace to the city, would be removed forever. And so again, he's advocating about civic improvement, and he envisioned that as a park. He writes about Water Street, and he says, at one time Water Street was a principal business thoroughfare on the east side, but when the Monongahela Railroad was built, a high retaining wall shut off the street and isolated it from the rest of the business section over there. And with the construction of the high-level bridge, Merchant Street came into her own, and Water Street was sort of in a state of isolation, solitary isolation. And so in 1947, again, he's writing about it and all the crime. He said, the street was left to the dregs mostly, and the flotsam and jetsam of an industrial community which drifted into the eddies of this forgotten thoroughfare. So Mr. Smith, campaigned to bring this to his attention. Unfortunately, he died in 1957, but something good happened. Around 1958, finally, the city of Fairmont passed an $800,000 revenue bond, and that included a new Everest Drive, and it also included the eradication of all the buildings, and that became the long-awaited cleanup project for Water Street. And you had, at least the riverbank, you had a little bandstand, you had a fountain, but he had a green area with plantings there. And so this came about, unfortunately, after Mr. Smith died. He never knew this, but in the 1963 Centennial Yearbook of Marion County, an article that was called Palatine Park is a Long-Awaited Cleanup Project. What it says is, Fairmont's beautiful Palatine Park is a dream at long last come true. The former Water Street slum district bordering on the east bank with its disgraceful, unsightly buildings, um, poorly kept, the slum. It's been transformed into an area of beauty. And so civic pride replaced shame. And I thought that was a good lead in to the efforts to finally take care of Water Street. And people like the editor of the newspaper, like I said, from 1927 to the late 40s, he's calling for eradication of that area. Let's create a park. And the first the stages of this occurred with that city revenue bond. And then many years later, when you get the present day, the county commission, the government agencies came together to create what we have today, which is a beautiful facility. Activities go there all summer. I mean, this is what Mr. Smith envisioned back in 1927. And that's the beauty of this story. And we are very fortunate in this community to have so many activities that take place there over the summer, and they're all free. So it really is a beautiful spot today. The history is very rich, and we shouldn't forget about it. And that's the beauty of looking back and unearthing this part of Fairmont history.